Welcome to Breaking Banks. Welcome back to the Futurists. This is our anniversary show. It's a very special show, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, the wonderful and beautiful Katie King, Miss Metaverse. I'm allowed to say that.
Happy to be back.
Married to her. And of course Brian Solis joining us in the hosting chair. Brian, thanks for joining in.
Yeah, you could always add the adjective beautiful as well.
Okay. Hang on. Yes, there you go.
Yes.
All right, but what we're really here to hear of is two guests who have been on our collective shows now over the space of 7 or 8 years, depending on how you sort of measure it. And the best shows in the past on Breaking Banks in particular, the podcast that's now 10 years old, have been often with these two gentlemen, and they just riff off each other tremendously. So that's why we wanted to have them on together. And that is the irascible Robert Scoble and the immutable Brian Roemmele. Welcome to the show, gents.
Wonderful to be here.
It's awesome to be here, and it's awesome to talk to Brian again. It's been a while.
It has
been a while.
We have a lot to talk about.
All right, so here's a bit of a test for you guys. See how good your memory is. Do you remember the first time you appeared on the podcast?
No, I've been on hundreds of podcasts.
It's a blur.
So, Robert, you first appeared August 24th, 2015 on Breaking Banks. And Brian, you first appeared March 18, 2016.
Wow.
Robert, your first show was on artificial intelligence, particularly Siri. And Brian, your first show was on voice interface, voice AI.
Wow.
Very
so,
cool. Which they didn't show the new Siri this week. They kept that muted and out of public view.
Well, it's obviously going to be an important part of the strategy for Vision Pro as well, which we want to get into. Of course, that's the big announcement that's happened this week. There's been a lot of conversation about it.
I thought the big announcement was how many LLMs does Brian have running in his garage?
Ooh,
exactly.
Now I have to keep that dark.
But
I was walking around with a Unity employee. He's like, "Oh, we need a LLM for every voxel around you. Keep in mind, you're going to soon have billions of voxels, volumetric pixels around you in this headset."
For it, man. You could use DNA, right? But anyway. We're going to get sidetracked very quickly here.
Easily.
I do think that, it feels like, particularly for you, Robert, but also, we've had many conversations about the smart glasses stuff over the years on the show. But Robert, it's like you've been waiting 8 years for this moment, right?
Well,
when did you first start publishing on the spatial stuff? That was with...
I interviewed Matthias CTO in their headquarters in Germany, and they showed me monsters on the sides of skyscrapers. That's an augmented reality company that Apple bought. That sort of the CTO really set up this strategy with the Apple team, and so that was 2009. I think.
Yeah, well,
it's been a while
ago.
It's been a while. People have been dreaming about augmented reality for a long time, and finally Apple gets into the market with a pretty nice product.
I mean, when we look at sort of the evolution of this tech in particular, Apple appears like they had to invent a number of technologies to get where they got to with this unit. In fact, I was saying, in a chat with someone on Facebook that there's probably only two companies in the world that could have done this, and I think it's Huawei and Apple. I mean, I'd debate that with you guys. I don't think Oculus could do this, for example, because it's really pushing the boundary on hardware. Brian? What do you
They
think?
don't have the ecosystem. I mean,
Yeah.
Brian and I'll talk for an hour just about ultra wideband radios that are in all the Apple devices, you know?
And it's the ecosystem, like Robert said, but it's also the depth of their ability to engineer to craftsman level. I mean, there's so much that was undercover that went into this, and why it took so long. Some of it was just really kind of getting caught up with getting the resolution to the level that it's acceptable to be sort of passing through in a mixed reality setting. That was a really tough thing for Apple. Robert and I used to always talk about battery technology, the heating problem, having that much display that close to your eyes, and what's the heat profile going to be like. And Apple did an incredible job. They didn't carry the battery in the device. That was a big problem with engineering for quite a number of years. They were debating the perfect device does not have an external cord, right? I mean, that's the dream. And there was a tremendous amount of debate on whether or not Apple will run with a device that has a tethered power supply. And they made the right choice because battery technology is much slower than Moore's law.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I imagine they probably could have put it in the headband or something, a shaped battery. But even then, you're going to compromise on comfort and weight and so forth, right?
The heating of the battery also during charging and discharging.
Yeah.
And Apple was profoundly interested in weight and weight balance. This was a really big thing because all prior sets that had any reasonable amount of electronics, you literally had a forward tilt to your head after a while because it's quite heavy, some of these devices.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Brian, you have actually tried the Vision Pro. So tell us how it wore. How did it feel on your head? What were the get into that experience. How long did you have with the units to play with?
A very fast 45 minutes,
Wow.
but most of it was unfortunately talking about it and not really getting to use it. So it flew by very, very rapidly.
And Brian, real quick, before you jump into that, how many of those minutes were personalizing it for your experience? Because I understand that every headset has to be customized for the user.
That's very accurate. So that was really the crux of the issue. Well, first was the wow moment, right? I said, just let me look at it and try to get a feel for the build quality and some of the parts that went into it, the machining. And then it was the fitting. There's a lot of adjustments that you can make. I didn't care to go to the fine tuning adjustments because I just really wanted to jump in, like any of us would have been. It's like, come on, let's just try it out. And so once you're in the device and it's reasonably adjusted, which is what mine was, it is quite phenomenal. The very entry point into it, you kind of just getting your way about you, especially the dimensionality of the user interface. The user interface is three-dimensional in a way that I can't really quite explain. I don't think flat pictures or video kind of demonstrates it, because the movement of your head allows you to kind of see around and above the user interface. So let's imagine a typical icon, say the Safari icon. It pops out almost what feels like 3 to 7 inches, according to how your head is positioned, from the backing of the icon. And these little things like that are not only interesting, but they allow you to be able to focus on what you're trying to actuate. And that was the really big first adjustment, is that your eyes are really controlling the interface in a way that it's I got to say, it's magical. You would actually, once you got used to doing things this way, this is what's going to happen to all of us. We're going to stare at screens and we're going to wish that we can just do the things that we were doing in this sort of visual OS world that Apple's created. And that alone is going to be addictive. The other thing that I noticed rather rapidly is that you attune to the environment that Apple presents to you. I would say with me, it took about 10 minutes to fully attune to it. There is some adjustments to get used to between when you're going into what I would call real OS, your life, and then visual OS inside the system, and the interplay between the two. I already imagine thousands of ideas in my mind of how not just games, but different apps would be adjusted to this type of environment. I mean, mapping, for example, and getting around town and touring, it's phenomenal.
Well, that's one thing that we didn't actually see, is we didn't see the work that they've done on the OS for out in the wild. You know, this is, for now, it was shown as limited to sort of a household environment, or you can imagine in a working environment in sort of a limited space, rather than you're not going to walk around with these things on out in the public. You might sit in a plane or on a train.
They don't want it that way yet. That's the big thing.
Right.
Robert and I and you guys, we're going to go walking around with this stuff, right? And
because we're nerds.
Yeah, right. And I alluded to before the show how Robert's probably going to get a picture going, but the bottom line is once you start realizing the power of this system, you're not going to restrict people from using it in the wild, no matter what the embarrassment or uncool or nerd whatever level that it performs under. Now, is it dangerous? Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of things you're going to need to do to make these things less dangerous. But just like Tesla or anything else, you're going to have sort of navigation built around you. It's already in the system. I mean, the mapping technology, and Robert can speak to this also because he's right on this technology. The mapping technology is absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think most people realize that when you put this device on, and what I mean by most people writing about it that have tested it, when you put these things on, they're mapping the room that you're in a very rapid fashion. And it stores that map.
Like 20 millisecond kind of rapid.
There's no lag, right?
Well, there's no lag. But once the map is in place, it's phenomenal what it can do to that environment and how it works within that environment.
And when we say map, we're not talking about a blue line on the floor. We're talking about a 3D environment of your reality.
Absolutely.
Like digital twin.
You can actually like record memories, right?
Well, tell me about this digital twin of the real world, because that's the real big differentiator from Zuckerberg's devices. You know, if you play with an Oculus Quest Pro, they do mixed reality in that headset, and it's pretty good. But the reality is blurry, watery, has scenes in it, doesn't have rich color, doesn't have a lot of detail to it, and is not segmented, so you can't interact with it. Tell me about the reality that you see when you just fire this thing up and you're looking around. What does the room around you look like? Oh
man, Robert, it's disconcerting. What happens is it's disbelief, and obviously, if you really, really try to look, you can detect that you're in the bubble, right? As I would put it, but it's disconcerting because it is so close. It's making you second guess. And after that initial uncanny valley sort of feel, it's very slight. You kind of get used to it. And then all of a sudden you accept it as what you're seeing. And then once you start getting the hovering of the user interface, and particularly after you watch like a short video, I think the really remarkable thing, it's not so much web browsing, which I really love the web browser. I for some reason, it really struck me as a lot of fun. But once you see a video for a couple of minutes and then you kind of come back to, the digital twin, your world looks, 3 times better. I don't know why that is. It just helps you adapt more rapidly. And at that
Maybe
point,
you did a few more scans while you were watching a video too, and
I-
filled in a few holes here and there.
I could imagine it. I could imagine it did, because at some point you feel like the environment is richer. And I really wish I had a chance to visit another room. Maybe I wanted to see what it looked like in the outside world. I mean, I really was itching just to stand outside with it and see sky, trees, and
Yeah.
things like that. How does it render? What does it do? But the thing that I find really fascinating is once you get used to the interface, you probably accept that as your reality for at least
Right.
at least until something upsets it. You know, there are different things that are sort of cumbersome. Sometimes the way things move.
But we're
and
past the uncanny valley, right?
Oh.
We're actually into the point where it's convincing.
I would say in my limited interaction with it, I would not be sitting there scratching my head like we have with Oculus and other systems that have never really been released. I've tried that try too hard to stitch together something that really doesn't work. Like Rob and I used to always talk about, is the sensor technology in this device is where we're getting most of the benefit. And Apple just went over the top in sensors.
How many cameras are on this device?
I think it's 9 cameras.
And how many microphones?
6. It could be.
There's
Yeah, I think
12
so.
cameras.
12
12
cameras.
cameras.
12.
Yeah.
The camera's
Yeah.
looking at your
Robert,
eyes, looking inside
you
your
talk
ears,
about-
looking at the
Can you talk
environment.
about some of the sensors that they've got in this thing, you know, mainly through the acquisitions that you've seen over the years?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so we're obviously all the sensors that we find in an iOS device is there. But we're also, like Robert just alluded to, the IR scanning system that is tracking your eyes, primarily your iris, is really interesting and cutting edge technology. It's your gaze and your attention and the way your iris will expand or contract as you're looking at something. This is interesting technology, and anybody listening should be rightly so creeped out. But let me put a caveat on this. Your reality is that your eyes give away your attention before you even know it. There's something called The User Illusion by Tor Norstanders. It's a book from the 90s. I recommend anybody reading it. I read it once a year minimally. And there is a half-second delay between your conscious mind knowing what you're actually doing, meaning your subconscious mind is controlling your conscious mind, and your conscious mind is convinced that it had authority and agency to make the choice. We know that your eye gaze is already making some determination on what you want to do before you mentally actually know you're doing it. And now we have a technology that's reading your eye gaze and your attention before you know it.
And
So
this is real important, because if there's a loud sound over to the right of you, right, your mind gets, your attention changes from, let's say, straight in front of you to the right. Your eyes are already moving before you even figure out there was a noise, and the computer can see that your eyes are about to move over to the right and predict where they're going to land and unpack the neural radiance field that's around you in that area. This is called foveated rendering, where it's
Absolutely.
unpacking the data where
Foveated
you're
rendering.
actually
I've
going
never
to
heard of
look.
that.
Right, because the screen that you're viewing, let's call it a 12K wraparound screen, is not 12K end to end. It's only 12K where you're looking, and it fakes you into thinking the screen is a full-on 12K screen end to end, right? And that way the computer can keep up with you and drive this very high resolution screen without, burning up your head.
Yeah.
And what's vital,
Yeah, but
well, let me just finish at one point on this. What's vital to understand is Apple at this point is moving that data into a sort of secure enclave.
Secure enclave, yeah.
Yeah. So the reason this is important is advertisers are not going to get your gaze data
Right.
and start marketing. And this is vital because I trust Apple with this. If they, go into the box of mistrust, then, all bets are off. But that
We
data
call
is
it pure O2. We estimate you can fill 80% of the available real estate before inducing seizures. You remember that out of
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, quick question though, what is the actual experience like using? Yes, there's the eye control, but it's also gesture control as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Tell us about the control.
yeah, so you don't believe it at first, right? Because how can I put it? The fine movement of your fingers is read so well that you don't really quite believe it's that easy. We're so used to
and it's tracking your fingers everywhere. I mean, when you
Oh,
were
yeah.
using this HoloLens, the finger tracking only works right in front of you because the sensors only have a box in front of you, and if you go outside of that box, you can't control it. This is one reason Apple put so many cameras on the device, so that they could always be seeing your fingers no matter where your fingers are in 3D space.
And what's phenomenal that the tracking is so accurate, right? You think about
Right.
the billions of things it's really tracking, and somehow it finds the fine, you rubbing your thumb and first finger together as the little pincher.
Yeah,
And
crazy.
yeah, and the fact that it picks it up, so here's the thing that I think is going to take a while for people to adjust. Most of us who grew up on the original click pads on laptops,
Right.
you can tell older people, they tend to pound harder on the original click pads and buttons. And when it became virtual, or essentially a form of glass, you still can't believe that you don't have to hit so hard, and a really light touch. And a younger person barely touches it, and they're kind of used to it. Well, that's the same thing that's going to happen with this interface, is that you're going to make a lot more overt, ridiculous sort of hand gestures. And then you realize after a while, you can be so nuanced and almost like nobody can see it.
You can
like
be subtle, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know what it's called. I'll call it the shove forward and backward routine. That's the official Apple designation. That doesn't require, you can do it
Right.
in a way that almost nobody can even notice that you're doing it. And there are a lot of other gestures that I don't think Apple has talked about, and I don't know if they are quite part of the system, but there's a lot of different nuanced gestures that I think are going to come out. And
Brian, can I just, I know we have a few minutes before the break, but can you describe the elegance and the simplicity of a couple of movements? Like, because they reminded me of the gestures that were introduced with the iPad.
Yeah, the
like
cause and
something...
effect. So yeah, you talked about the push and the pull, but can you describe how that interacts with the interface?
So if you have a screen that and it's hard to tell distance. If you have a screen that's, say, 3 feet away from you, and you're wanting to just examine it a little more closely, you sort of just kind of pull on it, and it highlights, and it just comes towards you. And you're not so much doing a pull as you're just kind of gesturing towards it to come. You're beckoning the screen towards you, kind of. And I didn't really have training on the UI on purpose.
Intuitive.
No, yeah, I mean, I was told nothing. Just try it. I was fish into new water, and I picked it up pretty quickly. I mean, I got a little bit of guidance. I'm like, how do I do that? And it's like, how would you want to do it? Those kind of. I was like a Rogerian psychologist sitting next to me, helping me with the interface, kind of. But what happened was, you start just intuiting, how would you do that? What would you do in the real world? And a lot of those things just wind up translating. But the things that are different is that you don't have to nuance. You don't have to overtly do it. You can nuance. And I think that's the magic Apple brings to this.
Well, this is the first headset or head-mounted display, head-mounted computer, whatever you want to call it, smart glasses that doesn't need a separate control, that you can control with gesture movement. I mean, that's a big deal in itself. Although you can hook up a gamepad and stuff like that to play games, right?
Or a keyboard,
or a keyboard.
Possibly even use your phone for a controller, because this has a lot of sensors.
Well,
too, right?
what's interesting is you can actually look at your computer and the computer screen will pop in front of you and it'll become a widescreen, and you can use your computer keyboard on your laptop instantly. So there's no connecting. It's just like there. But here's what my thing is about game controllers. You're going to give them up. You are absolutely, once you're in this environment, you're not going to want really to, it's going to be like old fashioned. It's like, winding up your car to start it up, so I think game controllers are on their way out at some point.
Well, look at the Meta Quest, right? It's our daughter broke one of the remotes on it, and you can't even find replacement remotes. It doesn't matter if it's just one or both of them. They're hard to find. They break easily. So, I mean,
especially when she throws them across the room.
Especially when they get thrown across the room.
Yeah,
exactly.
Rage
Darn
quit.
It. Boom, against the wall. The thing about it is Apple had such debates. I would talk to engineers about putting rings and bracelets and all these different tracking systems. And thankfully, those things got voted down. There were so many patents, and I would share them with Robert. I'd put them up on Twitter and stuff. And I'm like, a lot of it was like, check out this patent. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, God, don't let Apple do the ring thing. Don't let them do these little controllers. They're ridiculous. It's so see? Yeah, the ring. Robert showing us his ring.
It's the new surveillance device, right?
Yeah. And that's the precipice where Apple crosses.
But this is what a lot of people miss about this. It's not just about spatial computing in terms of the interface. I mean, if you look at the last 60 years of computing, we've seen two overall trends. One is that computers get more powerful and cheaper, Moore's law. But the second is that the ability to control those computers also gets dramatically simpler over time. So we started having to use punch cards, right? And then it was green screens. Then it was 16 colors, then we got to multi-touch. But the best computer you can have is one that is just with you all the time, that is naturally controlled by your body and your senses, right? And the only way we can improve on that essentially is brain control interfaces, and we'll get there eventually. But this has always been the path we've been on to get sort of computing that is just ubiquitous around us and reacts to us in sort of natural ways.
I'm convinced they have a prototype for every year until we get to brain computer interfaces. Let's call that 15 years from now. I bet they have a plan for every year what they're going to introduce. Certainly the first 5 years leading into glasses, right? Because this product really is almost a prototype for the glasses. It's to get us used to augmented reality. Get us used to building for augmented reality, so that there's a lot of things to do when the glasses come, because the glasses are the real mainstream event. That's when everybody in your world is going to start using.
Right. So when you're talking about glasses, you're talking about augmented spectacles, essentially.
Yeah. Lightweight. Right.
So it's not going to be like today, the Vision Pro actually has screens. So you can't, when you're seeing through it, you're getting the camera's image projected onto these screens. Yes. But we're talking about glasses where the data is projected into your field of view using lasers or some other mechanisms like that, right?
Yes. Think about it, this first product. It's not going to be good at a job that's dangerous. Like if you work at on the Tesla factory next to the stamping machine, and there's a 6-ton stamping machine next to your hands. No, you don't.
You're not going to risk a power out from your screens.
You don't want to see your hand be flattened in VR.
You're not going to wear this while moving fast, running, mountain biking, right? Skiing. No. This is a device mostly for sitting on your couch and watching a movie, with a little bit of lightweight walking around, going to the bathroom, going to the kitchen while wearing this device, but not a whole lot of moving around, and not a whole lot of moving around quickly, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good point for us to have a quick break. And after the break, Robert, let's get into how it's been, picked up by the tech press and so forth, and what the overall impression has been on this. And
nobody said the screens suck. Everybody said, "Oh my God, those things! You get a big, beautiful screen in front of you, right?" Everybody's like, "Wow."
All right, well, let's get into that after the break. You're listening to The Futurists. We'll be right back with Brian Roemmele and Robert Scoble after this break.
Welcome back to The Futurists. We are talking about Apple's new Vision Pro mixed reality headset. We have with us Robert Scoble and Brian Roemmele. And to bring us right back, I'm going to just throw out a quick question. I know we want to talk about the press and the media's reaction, but Brian, you had the unique opportunity to wear this thing for 45 minutes. And I would love to just quickly have you describe for us that crown experience, because I didn't know I was ready for that feature and its brilliance. And then last but not least, please put that chef's kiss on it about the hologram of what people see who look at you while wearing this.
Wow, great questions, Brian. The digital crown, I guess, very similar to the watch. It's something that I predicted, probably 4 years ago when I started digging into Apple patents, because it started coming up everywhere. And I remember getting in debates, a lot of, Apple pundits, they would go after Robert and I all about this stuff, that we're wrong. We don't know what we're talking about. It's not going to be this. And that crown, I really was convinced was going to show up somewhere. I was hoping it wasn't on a device, like you had a hold to control this. It just felt wrong. And when you turn it, it's actually more well jeweled, more well feeling wise to touch than you would have on the watch or anything like that. You have I guess haptic feedback while you're turning it. At least I did. It had a number of unique use cases. I did not even have the chance to explore all of it, but you could do basically anything with it. You can, sort of do a zoom, if you will, on some apps. But I think that was a well-designed Apple feature. And it's also an avert notice to people, around you that you're kind of doing things. I think there's a lot of what I would call social contract issues that we're always going to have to deal with new technology. It's like, where is somebody going to be using this? How are they going to be using it? How do you know they're using it? And I can't express enough how important what Apple did with just the visual of eyes. And that segues to what you were saying about the virtual version of you. Vitally important that you are able to create eye contact, real simulate. It doesn't matter. It's so vital. If we don't have this eye contact, we are running into such a disconnect in a social setting. And it also
can lead to injuries, by the way. And this is Apple's advantage. They can come in late and learn from all the mistakes that have been made by Microsoft with HoloLens and Oculus with the Quest and all that. One of them was my dad got hurt while my kid was playing VR, because my son was inside the environment, swinging his arms, and my dad didn't realize that he was stepping into the play space, right? He didn't understand what the person who was wearing the VR headset was doing. And
actually, Charlie ran
these
into
kinds
me a
of
couple of
eyes, you would know that, the eyes are swinging over to the left real fast. That means somebody's about to, hit a baseball or something like that in a virtual environment. And so it's much safer that way. Plus, if you're wearing the device, Brian, tell me what happens if somebody walks into your play space. Let's say you're completely immersed in something that, like a VR experience, and somebody's walking into your play space. It uncloaks them a little bit. As they walk toward you, they become clear that there's somebody in the real world coming toward you, and so it sort of stops the environment and shows you that person, which is real key.
That's a great question, Robert. So basically, I didn't get to do very much gaming. I was just really all about trying to dive into the UI. But I can tell you that when you're in where something is being occulted by, you have a screen and then somebody might walk past it, the system is so responsive and so reactive that it's detecting it on your far peripheral before your eyes would see it. So this is an important thing about the visual window that this device has is past what your normal visual window on the peripheral of your vision is all around you. So you
don't feel like you're reaching a screen limitation, right?
No.
Wherever you can look, you will be able to see.
You actually tilt your head because you can't believe that it doesn't find the end. It's sort of an infinity. At least in my testing, I almost believe it has to, but the simulation of that screen, like Robert said, it just keeps building that screen based upon where's your eye tracking, and it's building that part of what your eye is looking at. And so because the cameras can go past where your eyes are seeing, that it sees what you don't see. And so it's looking behind your head.
I do have a question, Robert. You tweeted out on the day, you tweeted out that it was everything you hoped for and more.
Yeah.
Right. And, you've been watching this for years. You both have, we all have, right? We've been watching this development of this for years. But let me ask you this question. Is there anything that they didn't have or they didn't execute on that you were surprised about, or something you would have liked to have seen?
Oh, they didn't show a lot of things, right? There's a second keynote still to go when this is getting close to being in stores. And they're going to show off a lot more of the stuff. For instance, this is a very powerful camera technology, and they barely showed that. They showed a very muted capture of a father with a child. They didn't show off a lot of really amazing camera technology that would track the child or do anything like that. That's coming in the future sometime. But
in the future,
because the technology here is an array camera. There's several cameras capturing your surroundings and can do it in a way that can build a neural radiance field, a 3D scene. It's really going to be amazing for photographers to play with. And this leads into what the purpose of this thing is, which is an experience delivery vehicle, right? If I'm trying to deliver a concert to people's homes, right? Do we want that on a 2D piece of glass, a TV with a 2D sound system? No, we want it to be like you're in the front row. Well, can we put somebody in the front row wearing one of these Reality Pros, capture it or stream it to everybody else who's watching at home?
Right. So you could watch NBA, basketball match live from the free throw line or something,
Actually,
Bingo.
they're doing a big thing with Disney and ESPN. So with the Vision Pro, so that you'll be able to do just
and
that.
they just made a deal to get
make it
Messi into the Miami soccer team, right?
Absolutely.
So they're going to do a bunch of deals like this. One of the advantages, and there's a lot of magic of VR, of immersive technology like this, right? One of them is you can embody yourself in somebody else's headset.
Yeah.
So I can go into Brian's kitchen and watch him make dinner, right? From his perspective. I'm actually inside of his head. Someday, if we get a humanoid robot, we're actually going to be able to use a device like this to embody ourselves in a robot and control a robot remotely. We might even make dinner while we're sitting on the beach, something like that, right?
And Robert brings up a good point. And from the very basic, and that advanced outlook is phenomenal. We're definitely going there. But from the basic low-hanging fruit on the tree, 3D photography from these devices are absolutely a game changer. Apple just touched upon it, but I believe that we're seeing the rise of a new genre of dimensional photography that is going to be taken by these things. And by the way, in sports, just to let you know, somebody can wear a headset that essentially has all of the camera sensors, and
Right,
not
to
necessarily
record
the
that
screen,
without
to
having the
record.
screens. Yeah, exactly.
And you can have a whole team
that's a good
jumping
point.
from one player to another player, to a car driver, to
Wow.
somebody hitting the ball, to the catcher. Can
Did
you
you
imagine?
guys ever see that? Remember that movie? It must have been in the 80s, Brainstorm or something, where they used to be able to record memories.
Yes.
Brian, do you
Yes.
remember that?
Yeah.
Natalie Wood.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
That's essentially where we're at.
It is.
You know,
We're right there.
this stuff.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, the Insta360 camera company came to my house. The founders of that company came to my house and talked about how AI is inside the camera, using computer vision to see features in the world around you. And then the camera readjusts the ball of pixels in real time. So if you're shaking the camera, the horizon is always locked on solid.
Wow.
Right.
Nice.
And this device has that kind of capability and way more, because they have way more computer vision to use on this device than the Insta360 camera.
Well, the other thing is that with the Unity partnership, we've seen Unity and NVIDIA, demonstrate using ChatGPT to have AIs in game that will have a creative conversation with you within certain bounds. So now you're going to have generative AI in a virtual world with generative characters, like it just in a perfect 3D space. It sort of blows my mind, this stuff.
They didn't show that either. They didn't show virtual beings. They didn't show
you doing
Siri.
virtual meetings with people, like the smart glasses in what is it, anyway.
If we all got hired by Apple, and it's our first week at Apple as executives, they do a whole bunch of onboarding training, one of which is a class on the Apple Way. And the first thing they teach you is understand the customer journey, understand where customers are when you're trying to take them through a paradigm shift, because that's what Apple's doing right now. They're taking us step by step through a paradigm shift into 3D computing.
So
right?
I want to dive a little bit into that, Robert. So one of the things that and Brian, please feel free to jump in based on your experience with the demo unit. But one of the things that is fairly clear is that apps in this space won't work like apps on your phone, and the ability to have these applets or widgets or whatever you want to call them, these small chunks of contextual functionality and interface pop up in the real world. We haven't even really seen the start of that either, right?
No.
But there is a new paradigm in sort of this contextual software coming. Brian, did you start to get the feeling that there's a framework for that, or is it still sort of like iPad apps adapted for this thing at the moment?
I believe there's a framework, and I think that framework is open to imagination. I think the basic developer spent a lot of time looking at the developer UIs and developer ways to build around what Apple is creating. And I think, like Robert said, a lot of this has not even been shown. This is beyond just having training wheels. This is just like, they didn't want to overdo and expose and overload your ability to comprehend what's going on. It's really a 3-year process of baby steps. And meanwhile, Moore's Law, we're going to see that double chip that is out there is now going to be a 6 chips in one. That's the next step. Once we get to that level of compute power, you're going to have NPCs that talk to you in a generative type of way. You're going to have, you can create. So imagine if you create 1 or 2 personal assistants that are embodied in a 3-dimensional space that is basically ChatGPT, Auto GPT, going out and doing things for you in that 3D world.
I mean, this is the thing, is we're going to have agency built into this as well, right?
Yeah, and the diary is a good example. And a lot of people just chuckled off on that. Context is so valuable. And Apple needs to create a social contract with you to have your context embodied in a secured environment. What I call the intelligence amplifier in your wisdom keeper is based on having as much context about you as possible, but in a way that it's not in the cloud. You can't give away that much data and float it in the cloud.
Right.
It must be hyper local. Apple is starting that with this sort of journaling system, and
they must have storage on the Vision Pro unit. Did they talk about the storage capacity?
Nobody's really
Or is it
talking about that.
cloud-based?
Well, there is some of that, but nobody's really talking about that type of, just like they don't really talk about how memory is being used in iOS devices, especially first couple of years. But the idea of a journal and the idea that AI is going to start piecing this together for you, all your pictures, all your video, all your interactions, and then to be able to have a conversation with it and say, you know, what was I doing that day? And you see this flashback.
Or what? When was that? When was it that my daughter did this and describing the situation, and it'll find the memory visually for you? This is sort of wild, man.
That is the movie that we talked about.
And get
earlier.
this, your daughter pops up at 4 years old and says, "Hi, Daddy." And right there, she's 25 right now. And there she is, 4 years old. "Hi, Daddy, I made this picture for you." And it's a 3-dimensional, realistic image of her. And like I said, there's a lot that we can unpack here. There's another side to this. I don't want to bring anybody down, but there's a lot of negativity that we need to all deal with about what this all means to us psychologically, emotionally, and societal wise. Having memories like that so profound is,
well, memories
is powerful.
I mean, we've shown this, you know, there's so much proof about this, but memories just generally aren't very accurate. You know, our memories are flawed. This is why when you get 6 people that witness a crime, they see 6 completely different things. You know,
they're idealized and they're optimized, whereas raw reality memories have a different flavor and effect. But the thing about it is, our AI can actually construct our memories in the way that we most like to remember them. And so there's going to be that warping of reality also. So that
we do that already, though. You know,
we do.
Yeah, this is different though. When you're in a 360 video that you've captured on a 360 camera, you can relive the entire memory behind you, in front of you, to the right of you. I mean, I took a 360 camera to Coachella, and you can look down and see everybody in the whole building dancing, right? And you can even see a little drug deal going on. If you look carefully.
With Robert.
Captured for all time.
But you know, and what was that? What was that, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Robert?
7 or 8.
Yeah. All right. So imagine where technology is now, and that immersive space, everything at some point. I'm not saying this is, you know, Vision Pro right now, but at some point, every one of your memories can be reconstructed for you in a way that is relatively instantly available. And
this will help you in your old age. If you're getting
absolutely
dementia, Irene and I interviewed a lot of people doing mental health research with VR, right? And Skip Rizzo down at USC has been doing a lot of this kind of work with people who are suffering PTSD, the veterans and stuff like that, and people who have dementia. And if you're getting dementia, you're getting older and your mind is starting to fail. Reminding people of who they were gets their mind to reconnect a little bit and stay a little bit more present than they would have otherwise. And a little bit, and I'm much happier. So you really do want to record as much as you can when you can with this kind of device.
Let me give you one more.
You can relive your past in this headset in the future when you're getting brain problems like dementia.
Let me give you one more iteration of that, and Robert is right on. You will insert yourself into the memory because the AI will have a perspective that you had when it existed and have the embodiment of what you look like at that point in time. And you can actually see yourself in your memory as a movie. This is not only profoundly important for memory and things like that, it could potentially be used in a positive way. I won't really dwell in this show on negativity, but it can be used in a positive way for mental health. Because a lot of times mental health breakdowns come from a breakdown of your own perspective. You don't see yourself in the right view. A lot of it is negative self-talk, negative break. You know, we all know this. But it's hard when you're in the midst of that to be able to break out of it. And AI can literally break you out of it.
Here's the thing. Do you guys remember Minority Report? I know you do.
Yeah.
Right? You remember the scene where Tom Cruise is watching a memory of his son, you know, and he's repeating the lines that his son's saying and stuff like that. And that was set in 2054. And we looked at that as like so sci-fi. And this is literally able to do that right now.
Can do it
Yeah.
right now.
Pretty insane.
Yeah. And it's happening
in
at
that
such a rapid
ad.
pace. Right.
Sorry,
Think
Katie?
No, it's in the Vision Pro, the teaser trailer for it. I mean, there was a scene just like that where the man's watching his iCloud videos and photos, and
Yeah.
you know, he's sitting on the couch doing the gesture control and everything. I mean, that reminded me of that scene from Minority Report.
Yeah.
I mean, we're there, 100%.
And the thing is, that's the, like Robert was saying before, that's the training wheels 1% version of where it winds up going. Because if they would jump to the real big version of this, even though they could do it, it would be, I think, so hard for most people to digest that it would almost be repulsed by it, because it is a lot to take in at a very small pace. All of us here have experience with moving on the wave of technology, but it's easy to forget what the average person is dealing with the information overload. They don't have the skill set necessarily yet to say, how does this fit into my life? Why do I need this? And they unfortunately are hearing the dystopian aspect of it mostly.
It'll take time. I mean, you know, we hear it with all these new techs, right? But this feels different. This feels sort of fundamentally different.
As computers get closer to your brain, the resistance level goes up. I study resistance to paradigm shifts, right? And have for 40 years. And the resistance to this field of technologies is extraordinarily high because it's so freaky and it's close to you, right? It's very intimate and you're wearing it. And there's a lot of resistance just to that. I don't want to put it on. I don't want to wear glasses. A lot of people tell me, I don't want to wear a thing on my face. That's not attractive to me. Once they do it at an Apple store, they're going to change their mind. We know this, but that's the resistance up ahead of this. And it's real interesting to study this resistance.
Yeah. No,
Brian's studying the resistance to AI, right? And we're going through a revolution in AI as well at the same time this device is getting shown to people, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and
a
at
lot
some
of
point,
negativity with the metaverse, that's for sure.
And at some point, we're not going to distinguish the differences between any of these technologies, because essentially we're at a vanishing point where everything is basically AI, right? I mean, whatever that means, the images, the text, the audio, the video, everything will be coming out of that particular paradigm, and that's changing and transforming society at such a rapid pace that even the people that are riding the wave are like looking around saying, what's happening? Like, I mean, I'm dealing with AI models that are coming out about every 12 or 15 minutes. So every 12 or 15 minutes, I get a ding and somebody has created another local AI model. And sometimes it's a derivative of the base of Llama model. Sometimes it's something else, but it's always getting more powerful.
Robert, how quickly is this going to kick off a whole new suite of spatial computing startups? I mean, you know, we've had them, but I'm talking about like when we look at the e-commerce boom or the app boom or the fintech boom, you know, you're talking about a specific generation of startups that have got funding around that, like we're seeing with AI right now.
Instantly, and there's already a bunch of them that have been created that will accelerate because of Apple's moves, right? They're going to get more funding because the investors have been telling me they're not funding anything until Apple comes. And now that Apple's come, we know what Apple's direction is. And okay, they're going to bring glasses, let's say in 2 to 4 years. That's the main event. This is just to prepare the developers and prepare the users, get people to go to the Apple store, put it on for 10 minutes, like Brian got his demo. Everybody's going to have the same demo to see, oh, a new experiential age is here. A new kind of TV is here, right?
The lines around the block I'm predicting this already.
Yeah,
It's a sellout.
yeah.
All right. It's sellout.
You remember the old days
13 minutes.
camping out for the iPhone?
It'll
People are
be
going to be
worse.
camping out to do a demo.
It'll be worse. The lines around the block.
Wow.
They're redesigning Apple stores, by the way.
You heard it here first on the
yeah.
Futurists.
Yeah, right. So, in fact, this is inside information. They're going to redesign Apple stores in a profoundly different way.
Oh, really?
Yes, over half the store is going to be dedicated to this.
Everything in the store is going to have a grid pattern on it, so the cameras can really know where the hell you are.
But the demos are going to be there's what I call demo pods. They're going to be areas where Apple employees are going to have people coming in just to demo these things. It's going to be exhibitional kind of demonstration, so people in the store can see that people are trying these things on. So the plan is to take over half the store. Over half the employees will be working on that side of the store. Lines are probably going to be forming for at least the next, after it's available, at least 3 months. You're going to have to take reservations. They're going to want a little bit of a line out there. They're going to have the little red carpet thing going on. The whole thing. So we've not even seen the tip of the iceberg, and there are people going to get crazy about it. Yeah. But here's the thing. At some point, when do we throw away our other devices? And Robert and I used to talk about this. When do we
2027.
Right? So
I say 2027. It's 5 years.
For us, though, right?
Okay. So 2029 for everybody else.
So in reality, I really think Robert's on the money. We're probably going to abandon most of our devices, ultimately our phone. There'll be a thinner version, a glasses version, like Robert said, that is essentially going to be your everything device. You won't really have
because you won't have a laptop, because you can have the screen and keyboard and control device in this.
You still will have your phone in your pocket, though, and that's real key.
You may not. You may not.
The first device, you're going to need the phone.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
The first glasses. By 2030, the phone doesn't need it anymore. Right. The computers then are small enough to put on the rim of the glasses, but for a bit, having the phone is
and we need some improvement in battery tech, maybe carbon nanotubes.
It's battery, but it's also
reactor.
It's also to create this beautiful visuality in front of you. You need a lot of GPUs, and you need to run them really hot. And putting those on the edge of the glasses is really, really difficult. Yeah. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is trying to do the same idea. He's spending tens of billions of dollars in the custom silicon because he doesn't have the phone. He has to put everything on the glasses to make it work. And he's putting all the GPUs up on the cloud, which tells you a huge difference between the philosophy of these two companies. Apple wants to put the AI inferencing close to your eyes, i.e. on your head, or certainly in your house on a new kind of mesh network. That's why I keep bringing up ultra wideband, because it's really key infrastructure.
So a combination of ultra wideband and 5G, super low latency, 5G, 6G tech.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. Where the AI inferencing is being done is hugely important for privacy. Mark Zuckerberg is going to do all that AI inferencing up in the cloud on an NVIDIA bank of computers up in the cloud. Apple's not. Apple's going to do it on the head or in the house on this ultra wideband network, and the inferencing is not going to go to the cloud.
So you could have your home unit or your car unit that syncs with, but
this is hugely important, because when I was playing VR in a Quest, that device has 4 cameras on it as well. My wife walks into the room naked. Where's the inferencing being done? Is it being done on the cloud? In other words, does all that data go up to Mark Zuckerberg and the inferencing is done on the cloud? That's a huge privacy problem. Apple doesn't believe that way. They're keeping the eye sensor data in the headset. They're not letting it go even to the house, right? They're doing that for privacy. And only Apple can deliver a private experience like this.
And Robert makes such a great point, is not only that, but I mean, everything that's going on around you that you can't even possibly predict. Obviously, that's the most overt thing. It needs to be local. There's no other question about it. There's no other company in a better position to make this as their dedicated path. So literally, like Robert has been saying for a long time, Apple's got a runway that is miles wide and miles long. And if anybody does
And
catch
they got
up
a hell
to
of a
them,
budget.
well, the budget.
They're also so freaking disciplined. I mean, I have I'm talking to you on an M1 computer. 21% of that chip is neural. It's not being used. It's sitting cold right now on my computer, and it was sold to me 2 years ago. In other words, Apple has a lot of AI power that's in the house already, that's connected
it's interesting
to
they didn't
the
say
ultra-wideband
AI
network.
in the show, in the developers conference. They didn't use the term AI.
They use machine learning.
Yeah,
they
won't use AI, and that's,
why is that, Brian?
That's a philosophical direction. It's the same reason why we're not seeing them use large language models, right? And a GPT interface. What we saw was spelling correction, and I'm dismayed by some of Apple's choices. A lot of it was, I think, boneheaded. Even though they do make good decisions and they are disciplined, they also make some really bad decisions. Siri was the worst decision they ever made by ignoring it and by not improving it by leaps and bounds. But here's the problem.
Is that going to change?
I hope so. The problem is large language models produce outputs that are not necessarily Apple-like. As much as
they have errors.
Yes.
Right.
And not only errors, hallucinations, and embarrassment. Even if you're using something like constitutional AI, which is in theory saying better things, Apple is still weary of wanting that out in a free world. Whereas the rest of us are like hot rodders in the garage saying, hey, let's just get the AI. So they don't like using those terminologies. Apple's always been opposed to that. They like to create their own terminologies. Machine learning is kind of generic. We're going to see a new terminology coming up from Apple in the next couple of months, probably before the end of the year, which will essentially be AI without the machine learning attribute. And Robert is right on the money. The neural unit inside of these chips, especially the one that is the many that are inside Vision Pro, are mostly underutilized, even in that device. So there is a massive runway. And if I was in the competitive position of against Apple, I would be rushing to be doing my own silicone as fast as possible and to try to understand.
But again, who's got I mean, there's very few companies in the world that have the budget to do this. But let me just, I'm conscious of the time, guys.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up. Let me just ask you, I mean, we could just go on for hours, obviously, but let me just, yeah, exactly. We have to, for sure.
Part two.
Let me just ask you this one question so we can wrap. Brian, you go first, and then Robert, you can close us out. This is the developer version. So let's say in a year or so's time when they do release, or maybe it's 2 years' time, they do release a consumer edition. How do you think it'll be different?
My feeling is that a year from now, we'll see the high-end consumer version that Apple really wanted to put out there. This is not rushed to market, but it's not the fully contained Apple device that we would ultimately want to see from the company. And it's only because there's a convergence of so many technologies that are taking off at once that they have to sort of piece it together. It is magical how they were able to catch all these technologies with a net and assemble them into a profoundly important device.
It's a decade or more of meticulous planning and
a lot of editing, a lot of stuff that was in there. I mean, we saw so many versions from our insiders that were edited out. Now, somebody might say Robert was wrong. I was wrong about a couple of things. No, those versions were up. They were running. The people dedicated 5 years of their life. Boom, it got cut out because it did not make the final grade. There's a lot of that going on. And when we see the next iteration, which essentially be a year from now, and I'm not saying it's a model change so much as how the software interacts, because we're seeing literally beta software. And I'm not saying it's buggy. I'm not saying it's not adequate.
We don't know everything that this can do yet from a software.
Absolutely.
Right.
So next
year,
we're
going to be discovering things for years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is, we're just beginning. And developers I've talked
But
to,
that's the point of this, right? That is the point of this product release, is that it is the start of something new.
yeah,
It's the
and
start of a new paradigm in computing.
the developers I've talked to that have just experienced some of the possibilities of building on this, their creativity is just beginning to be touched upon. And Apple is being blown away with some of the ideas that have already come up that were definitely not inside the company, but definitely in the minds of creative people. So we are just beginning, and I can't predict what some of these guys are going to produce. And I'm sure nobody can, but
well, I think it's interesting that they, this is the first time they've relied on people like Disney and Unity for parts of their ecosystem in this way. You had New York Times and others that released apps on the App Store to celebrate, but not partners in developing the platform and the ecosystem. I think that's different. Robert, what do you think
and
about
the fact that they had no pictures leaked of the device or of the user interface
It's
with
amazing.
all of these partners is real impressive. That shows there's only one company that has an NDA like Apple.
Yeah. And we didn't know the name of it until like finally.
Well, I bet the name changed like in the last couple of weeks.
it did.
Right,
It did.
because it was called
There's a different
Reality
name in
Pro
some of the
for a
docs.
while, and yeah.
Some of the docs have a different name for the product, and they didn't remove all the names for the doc in the docs that are up on the developer accounts.
So, Robert, just to finish off, what do you think the consumer version is going to be like in terms of differences?
Lighter, less heat generation. There still is some problems with heat if you really light up this device and try to do some advanced stuff. Many more consumer oriented experiences will be shipped around that time. Now, you said a year, Brian, you said a year from now. Is that a year from now? Like next June?
Yeah, next June.
Okay,
June, we're
but
going to
this
see.
device, all right, so hear me out. Let's say this device comes out March 31st, right? Or April 31st, sometime in April.
Yeah, they just said early next year. That's all they've said.
Yeah, early 2024.
April is pushing early next year.
Yeah.
It's like that's not quite early anymore. It's like, so if it's May, it's too late. You can't call that early anymore. So it has to be before April, and or April and before. And when they do, then you're predicting they're going to have another device like in June. So the first users are going to buy this device, and then another device is going to come out like
it's
for
going to be
Christmas.
An iteration, an iteration of the device. I'm predicting by, let's call it summer of next year, we'll have two devices from Apple in the marketplace. And I'm not saying either one of them are going to be markedly different from each other. There are going to be some feature capabilities that may be enhanced or reduced. How that plays out,
2,999 instead of
there might be a little bit less resolution on the chips that they're putting in the consumer version, right?
Actually, I think it's the other way around.
Oh, you think they're gonna even step it up, huh?
Yeah. So I think what we'll see by mid-year is a higher end version, and this becomes the lower end version, and we'll start seeing price drops, perhaps for the entry level or the version we see now by holiday next year. And Apple, let's look at it this way. There's a lot of Apple Premium that is baked into this initial price. When you look at the breakdown of parts on this particular system, it's not that expensive. It is even in its wildest dreams, we're still below $900 in parts. If we factor in Apple's if we amortize Apple's cost of building their own chipsets, right? Because you have to kind of figure what does that really mean. But from the manufacturing standpoint of just building those chips and putting it together, it's $1,000 cost device, if not a little less. I got to break one apart. Hopefully it's not me that does it, but somebody does it, and we start really looking at what's inside. But it is an incredibly exquisitely engineered device.
Does it blend? No,
It doesn't
I'm just
blend.
kidding.
Oh no, please don't do that.
All right. Well, listen, we really do have to wrap. But as always, you guys didn't disappoint. It's fantastic to have the band back together. Robert Scoble, what are you working on that we should be watching? I know you have a subscription service now on your Twitter stream, but what else? How else can we connect with you?
I'm seeing that there's a whole bunch of people who are using AI first for their businesses or their personal life, and that group is going to grow over time.
Oh yeah,
for a lot of reasons. And so I'm doing videos for and with those people, yeah, and covering that world very closely. I'm always watching Brian for what's he's doing.
We need to have another show where we just talk about AI, because I've got some great stuff for you guys that I've developed on that front as well. So, and Brian, I know you've got readmultiplex.com, but how else can people follow what you're up to?
Well, first off, I would say subscribe to Robert's Twitter, because he is going to blow your mind. It is absolutely worth it. For me, follow me on Twitter. I'm in my garage testing out AI models as much as I can, riding these waves. I'm trying to keep up with it. I have AI keeping up with AI at this point, and it's kind of fun. People that subscribe
Isn't that called the singularity?
Yeah, it's very close. People subscribe, become members to Read Multiplex. We have forums.
$99 for the year. It's extraordinary value.
Yeah, and I have old school 2003 forums, and we have masterminds where people are just building super prompts that are doing phenomenal things. We're doing the hive mind approach to this, and a lot of these folks are becoming prompt engineers. I've most recently somebody walked into a $390,000 a year job prompting AI, and they are doing extraordinary. They've saved the company multi-million dollars in the first 5 days of operation just by using AI within the company.
There you go. So this is what happens when you follow people like Robin and Brian. So fantastic, guys. This show should air next week. We'll let you know. But always an experience, a good one. Thank you for coming back on. And we definitely need to make this a regular feature, because it's just fascinating. Katie
Absolutely.
King, thank you, Miss Metaverse, for joining us.
My pleasure.
We will see you guys again next week. In fact, I can say it as we do every week, that we will see you in the future.
In the future.
That's it for this week. If you like the show, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, or share it with a friend, or share it on social media.
We'll see you again next week with more Breaking Banks.